Welcome to the Everyday Ironman podcast, where we talk to real athletes just like you and me that are working to complete an incredible goal. My name is Mike Bosch.
And I'm Jenna Russell.
And together we are welcoming endurance athlete Chris Hill. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited. Now, is it Chris or Christopher?
Chris.
It is Chris. Okay, perfect. Well, we're happy to be speaking to you this evening. I know that it's daytime for us; it's nighttime for you.
Yeah.
Right. So we appreciate you accommodating.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had a hard day as work, I'm sure. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction? So, as we always open our podcast, we ask our guests to give a little bit of an introduction of themselves so that we don't get things wrong, to be honest. So can you tell us where you live, if you work or go to school, are you in a relationship, do you have kids, and would you consider yourself to be athletic?
So I am a full-time professional coach. I coach pretty much anything and everything. Whether you have an endurance goal, which I tend to kind of specialize in most, or any kind of weight loss goal, I kind of do a lot of strength and conditioning work, a lot of rehab work, so kind of like physio-based work, kind of soft tissue work, and just work with a range of everyday people, from people who are just learning to swim, for example, or the people who have kind of more serious goals in the sense that they're more data driven and they're more looking for the kind of the 1%, if you will. In regards to that, I've been doing it for about 14, 15 years now. Pretty much as long as I've been with my partner. I have 3 beautiful children, so my days are pretty hectic. I've got a soon-to-be 13-year-old. She's 13 this Sunday. I've got a 10-year-old little boy and a 7-year-old little girl. So I completely understand on how busy and how hectic life can be.
Absolutely.
My partner is a midwife. So she works a lot of shift patterns, and with the flexibility of my job, because I kind of work for my own company, it works incredibly well in regards to kind of childcare, fitting around clients and my own training, around her 12.5-hour shifts every day, so pretty full on. But I live in Cardiff in Wales, which is part of the UK, the nicer part of the UK, I believe.
Oh, really?
You're always more than welcome to come, and I can show you around. And literally, I'm kind of an open book, as you'll soon find out, and I tend to talk a lot.
Oh, good thing you're on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, this will make our job easy, Jenna. We'll just say talk, and we'll just sit back and we'll just listen, and we'll interject ooh, really? Every once in a while, just so the listeners know that we're still here, and then our job will be done.
Definitely. But yeah, in regards to me being athletic, I'd say I kind of was one of these kids that was really active and thrown into anything and everything, just because I was or am a person with ADHD. So as a child, bottled up pop, kind of full of energy, and one of these people that if I'm put into and channel that energy, I get really productive, and if I don't, I get really destructive. So my parents kind of put me into a lot of kind of sports to kind of fill my time up. Tried anything and everything, and naturally, as you get into your kind of teens and so on, sport kind of fizzled out. Friends and social elements became more of a kind of a thing, if you will. Then kind of getting back into sport was more of a professional choice, because at the time I was a graphic designer, and the UK had its recession and there was no jobs. I was working in a bar, so it was then going back to my other passion, which was sport. So I went back to college, retrained, and kind of went along my journey back into sport and so on and so forth, and getting fitter, just because I'm a big believer in practicing what you preach. So I don't want to be one of these coaches that sits back and just says, do this, do that, and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, I'm kind of becoming one of the overweight swim coaches that you typically see on the side of the pool. I wanted to be this person that kind of led by example, and inspired the people I was working with, and also inspired my kids, inspired my partner, and just to be a better person all in all, you know.
Wow. That's a great introduction, Chris, I have to say. So we've learned so much. I have so many questions.
I know. I'm like, wait, so many questions.
Yes. Jenna, do you want to take the first stab? I made some notes.
I saw you writing as he was talking.
Yeah, as he was. Anything that pops in your mind, or do you want me to?
I've got a few. First off, you said you're in Wales.
Yeah.
Okay, don't tell Tyler, because my husband, because that is his like bucket list place to go. He wants to go there so bad, so we're going to be connecting after this. So that way we can plan our trip.
Yeah. You could have like a tour guide or something like that.
I know. Great.
Chris could give you all the ins and the outs and the local hot spots and stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
Tyler's very anti-touristy things. Well, we both really are. We like to do
we could literally show
the local stuff and all that. So
coming to I'm in Wales, which is becoming slowly iconic in kind of Britain and Europe.
Yeah, that would be amazing. It looks
that's
beautiful.
Awesome. And so I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to ask the obvious question, and that is, what is when people say the UK, right? Yeah. So I know that's the United Kingdom, but what all does the UK cover? So there's Great Britain, right? I guess, or England. Is it still called Great Britain, or am I thinking of history class?
Is the UK? So Great Britain is the United Kingdom. Inside.
Okay, so that's Great Britain, UK.
Yeah. So they're one and the same thing. So with that, there's a collection of countries. Everyone goes, right, Great Britain is England, right? Which in fact it's not. And every Celt, if you will, so the Scottish, the Welsh and the Irish absolutely hate it, because they're like, no, there's more of us.
Yeah, my apologies.
It's good to know that. Thank you for correcting.
So we're all used to it, and to be honest, there's a bit of kind of banter, if you will, and kind of jokes about it. So you've got England, you've got Wales, you've got Scotland, and then Ireland is kind of like, you've got the north part of Ireland, which is part of the UK, and then Ireland, the rest of it is separate, and that's what's like in the past caused a bit of tension between the Irish and kind of so on and so forth.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I appreciate that, because I struggle with United States geography. So when it comes outside of that, I really struggle. So I do appreciate that. And I made some notes, professional coach, soft tissue, teaching people how to swim. So I guess the question I would have is, how am I just now connecting with you? Like, these are all the things that for 2 years I've needed in my life, Chris, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm not quite sure how it took me this long to connect with you. And I want to talk about the reason that we came together. So I have one last kind of fundamental question, and that is, you mentioned that your partner is a midwife.
Yeah.
So is that exactly what I'm thinking that it is, where she helps deliver babies outside of the hospital?
So in Britain, I know the setup is slightly different in America, where you kind of midwives are kind of more privately based. In Britain, you have midwives that are kind of pre and postnatal, so before care and after care, and then you also have community-based midwives. So you'd be based in a hospital, or you'd be based in a local community, so working out of a local community doctors, working out of local community halls, in regards to kind of setting up local groups where kind of after you've had your kind of baby, that you would go along to meet other mums, to make other friends, to have kind of breastfeeding support, and so on. So yeah, she's been qualified since September last year, and she's been working full time ever since. And before that, she was doing 3 years of university training, which is kind of like 50-50, half in the classroom, half literally practical work straight away. And then 2 years before that, she kind of worked with, it's a team called the 7 Team, which is a breastfeeding support kind of branch of midwives within Wales. So
it's not hardly anything like I thought it was. That is so much more than I thought.
What she tends to do is, so she was on for postnatal for the last 6 months, and she's now going to go on to kind of prenatal, which is the delivery part of midwifery.
Cool.
And then she will take on. And so on.
That is amazing. It is something that is completely missing from not completely, but for most, like my experience with 2 children was completely missing. And I'm quite jealous of what you guys have over there.
Yeah, because it sounded
system.
Yeah, because it almost sounded like she helps transition somebody from not being a mother into a mother beyond the actual delivery process, right? The whole thing, right? That's awesome. Yeah, so cool. So cool.
And especially the whole like little support group. Let me find you mom friends. That's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important because especially now, I don't know about you guys, but I had my first child when I was 21, so I was still a child really, looking back on it. And it meant that all my friends, I was the first out of all my friends to have a child. So most of them were going out drinking, going out partying, going out and doing what they would probably do, which is kind of like university, work part-time and kind of live the life. I was raising my first child, going back to college, re-educating, working full-time, and it was very, very different. So having that community support from kind of midwives, meeting other mums and so on is kind of vital, I personally think, because sometimes I think you can feel incredibly alone, and I think it's important for
absolutely
mums as it is for men, depending on, because typically here in the UK we'll have a thing called maternity leave, which means you're kind of out of your job for X amount of time, and although it's 50-50 now, typically the woman will stay with the mum, with the baby, and you'll go back to work after 2 weeks, which leaves the woman very vulnerable because they're now isolated, lost all their friends really, and they've got a baby and all they want is adult conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. I took a half a day off when my boys were born, but they're 25 and 21, so that's been a number of years, so it's a little bit different. But
Tyler didn't take very many days. With Owen, our older one, I think it was maybe a week, and Aaron a day or two, but we were in the thick of COVID, so he was just working from home, so it was going to the office in a different room, but he was still relatively unavailable to me all day, and then it was just me and Aaron hanging out with the TV. Very isolating.
So what I'm hearing you say, Jenna, is if you have a third child, you need a midwife. Yeah. We'll see if we can get you connected that way.
Have your partner come over and hang out with me.
Or you can go to Wales.
Better yet, we'll go there. Yeah, you took my next thought.
Well, cool. Well, Chris, I want to get into your story, so to speak, right? So we have athletes on regularly, and we're talking about a specific race or how they've gotten ready for a race or something like that. And you're actually going through something a little bit differently. I reached out to you. You had posted in the Training for Ironman Facebook group that you were going to complete all of the Ironman branded events in the UK this year. And it wasn't for, you weren't, pounding on your chest. You're like, I'm going to do this thing, but you were doing it for a reason. Like you had a kind of a purpose behind that. And so I was hoping, can you share that with us?
Yeah, definitely.
So that we know.
So every year, from as long as I can remember, I have picked a number of serious challenges, and I pick a charity. So this year it's for this charity, Rock to Recovery. It's a mental health-based charity here in the UK. They specialise in looking after kind of the armed forces, ex-military personnel, and the emergency services. So any kind of 999 emergency services. So for that in the UK is your typical police, ambulances, fire service. It's also Coast Guard and also mountain rescue. Now, for me, I believe that we should do more in this country and in the world, really, for people who put themselves out there on a continual basis.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Continually make the difference that we all rely on, whether we realize it or not. Now, for me, I don't think we do enough. I don't think that these people are supported enough. And you can go into the news and find a million news articles nowadays that is telling that same story, and yet we're doing nothing to offer extra services for their well-being, their mental health, and their physical health. And yet there we are placing more and more demands on those services, and also cutting more and more budgets for those services. Yeah. And yet those people are still meant to produce the same outcomes, keep everybody safe, and ultimately keep their jobs whilst doing so, because they're under so much pressure that certain things can go wrong that shouldn't be going wrong because they're short-staffed, for example, and yet those people are then under fire. Yet if we had greater services for them, I'm a big believer in that they would be in a better way, So I know plenty of people in those services, and I wanted everyone to know that I'm kind of fighting in your corner. So for me, it was seeing this charity through Instagram, funny enough, and then just reaching out, because I think if I have an opportunity to do something good and for the greater good, then I believe, and I'm a massive believer in this, in all walks of life, that I have an obligation to then do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I reached out to them and had a few phone calls back and forth with this lovely lady called Charlie, which kind of heads up the charity. And I said, listen, I kind of want to help you, and since then I've kind of had people donate to my Just Giving page, and all the money will go to the charity. I'm not taking any percentages. I'm not covering any costs. It's literally all for them. And the reason why I kind of picked this challenge, if you will, for me, it was just something I thought that would be really cool to do.
Yeah.
Each year I try and push myself a little bit more. I try and kind of practice what I preach. And ultimately, I've always aspired to be the difference in people's lives. I want to make a difference while I'm here. I want to kind of lead by example, and I want to ultimately, and unfortunately, I believe it's becoming an old-fashioned modality of what a good man is. But I want to be a good man. I want to inspire my kids. I want to set the example for my daughters of what a good man is, so they then go to a good man, and I want to raise my son as one as well. So for me, it's the combination of a lot of different things. So it's my personal life and what I am to those, and how I behave is how they'll behave, and also to my athletes, that I want them to know that I'm in the trenches with them. I'm kind of going through what they're going through, and I believe that you can like take a training session, for example. You can write it down on paper, but until you do that session, you don't know how that feels. And if you don't know how it feels, then how can you then give it to that person based on what you know about them? But also, like, you don't know how it feels mentally. So if you're going to a dark place, for example, or you're right now living in a dark place, then you can't relate to that person. So with all the challenges that I do, with all the kind of life that I try to live, I try and put myself in those places so I can understand a little bit more, and be a little bit more empathetic, and kind of look to inspire through my own actions.
Wow. There's so many things about that I want to commend you for. Mm-hmm. But I have to point out to you that I avoid dark places. So the fact that you intentionally put yourself in the dark place to be able to understand, I mean, that's a bold move. And I totally respect your statement about how, you want to be able to experience it to know if your athletes can handle it and stuff like that. I think as far as what you were talking about the first responders and the police and all that, and obviously the world that we live in today, there's so many narratives, and this isn't a political podcast, right? But I don't think you can avoid the fact that it's tense. It's a tense situation, and while there especially in America, there have been some things that happen that are unexplainable in so many ways, but there's so many good people out there that are sacrificing to keep me and my family safe, that I feel for them. And this is a true story. This happened to me this week. I was at a work lunch, and one of my teammates that I don't get to interact with a lot was talking about his son, and his son is 16, and his son has announced that he wants to go into the police academy. And my teammate, his dad, he's terrified. He's terrified. And through conversation, we came up, we're like, that's horrible. Like, he should be proud that his son would want to do that. But the reality is, it's such a pressure cooker situation that I understand why his dad wants to protect him from that situation. And the fact that you are taking on this challenge, as you called it, to bring awareness to those that are dealing with all of the pressures and the stresses and that situation is incredible. So thank you for that. Even though the people are in Wales, no, I'm just kidding. Like, probably have a different lot. But I mean, what do you think there, Jenna?
There's a lot of thoughts that I'm having because you're right. It is, anyone that handles those situations daily is faced with trauma. And that is something that weighs on your body physically and mentally. And they do need help. A lot of people need mental health help. And for various reasons aren't getting it or can't get it. And that isn't a way to be able to support those who do need it the most, so that way they can do the job that they want to do. Because when it comes down to it, that's what it is just a job. But yet that job is so important, because without it, I don't know what we would do if we didn't have those amazing people to be able to help us. So like Mike said, I am in awe that that's your choice, and thankful that that's the choice that you're making to be able to help those that need it the most. And as someone who has been in those dark places and doesn't have the same traumatic job that others do, I know that even me being an everyday person that has experienced that we also thank you, because just putting it out there that this is a worthy cause and something that does need to be talked about more, starting with the people that need it most, can then trickle down to those who, the others as well. And I do want to back you up for a second, because at the beginning of one of your spiels, you talked that you were a kid with ADHD and how that impacted your childhood. And that is something, one, that I deal with personally, as well as my son. So I'm seeing it kind of in two different lenses. And then I'm also a teacher, so I see it through multiple different scenarios. And that is also a mental health problem, I want to say, in our society, that if it goes untreated and isn't dealt with in a productive way, the way that your parents supported you, can create a lot of negative emotions and a lot of negative feelings and self-talk and all of that. So that's something that we've been dealing with our son and his ADHD, of the emotional dysregulation that comes with it, and how he gets so down on himself when he's impulsive or, does X, Y, and Z, because he doesn't understand that it's something that's beyond his control. So you being open about that too is also really inspiring. And, I thank you.
When I was a child, I was one of the first people in my primary school to be diagnosed with ADHD, and I was the first person in my primary school to be diagnosed as dyslexic. With that came a nice, lengthy course of bullying. Now, for years and years and years, right up until I was kind of 18, going on 19, I'd say I was a victim of that, and a victim of life and my own circumstances. Now, the family support, although they tried their best, they also unfortunately had their own trauma from their childhood as my parents. Now, they weren't necessarily able to handle it their best or the best way. Since becoming an adult, and weirdly only recently diving more into the research of what ADHD is in the last 2 to 3 years, I absolutely hated the diagnosis, and I hated being told that I was different and made to believe that I was different when all I wanted to be was the same. Now, the difference is now I embrace it. And the difference is that I see what I have and who I am as a superpower, because there's a lot of things that I can do that most typical people can't do or won't do. And one of those abilities is the ability to just keep going, and as much as you mentioned about kind of your son, the way I see it is I have 10 voices going on in my head at the same time. Now, 9 of them are negative and they're nonsense. They're telling me that I'm not good at something, or they put me down, or they're just background white noise. the one person is singing my praises. The one person is telling me what to do. The one person is telling me where my future is and the jobs that I should be on task with. Now, over the years, I've come up with my own systems. I've come up with my own strategies to deal with my life and who I am in order to become the most productive version of myself and to become the person that I want to be, that I deserve to be, and that my kids deserve as a dad and my partner deserves as me as a partner. Now, with that, it comes a lot of acceptance, a lot of kind of self-love and self-promotion, but also a lot of reflecting in the sense that until I take ownership of every single thing in my life, then I'm a victim. And I choose to look at life in such ways that it's not my fault I have ADHD, or it's not my fault that I can't do this because I struggle with that, and so on and so forth. And I end up being a victim of everything, and it's not my fault, it's your fault, and so on. If I can take ownership of everything, which sounds in some respects kind of almost self-destructive, if we were to have an argument right now, if I can just go, okay, well, I'm going to say that it's my fault and act like it's my fault, even though that you potentially started the argument. If I then go, right, well, what did I do to escalate that argument? If you came into the room and started arguing with me, my initial sentence, approach would have either done one or two things. They would have either escalated it or de-escalated it. So how did I respond? And it's those little things. Sorry. It's those little things that if you practice and practice and practice and take ownership of all the little things of going, right, okay, why can't I do this? Or what do I need to do, in order to be successful, or to be more on time, or to manage my own emotions a little bit more, then you start looking at your environment. And if you can control your environment, then you can control everything in it. And that's not necessarily in a kind of a toxic way where you're controlling individuals in that environment, but you're controlling the environment itself. So, for example, in my house, I play a lot of kind of nice kind of low-level therapeutic kind of music, kind of yoga-based music type stuff, or acoustic kind of music. And what it does is sets that kind of very chilled environment. I put a lot of mood lighting on, and I control that environment, which then controls me and makes me a little bit calmer. It's also the reason why I make sure that I exercise regularly, so I can put my energy into something productive. And it's also, I will listen to kind of a lot of audiobooks because I'm dyslexic. It takes me a lot of time reading. So I'm much more productive if I'm listening to a book that is helping my mindset, for example. And I've got into a real habit within the last 3 years, for example, of going, right, okay, my partner said I'm not a good listener. So what are the top 10 books on how to be a better listener? And I'll read or listen to all of those books. And then it's the same with any single topic, you name it, whether it's a characteristic flaw, whether it's something about me, whether it's something that I want to inspire to be, I will listen to those top 10 books or books that they are referencing within those books and then go from there. And what that's done is really helped me to find ways to navigate the negative side of who I am, if you will, and bring out those positives. And don't get me wrong, it's still a working progress. However, I'm much more capable of handling my situations and who I am and regulating those emotions by controlling that environment.
So if you were to give yourself or tell yourself one thing whenever you were, young, what is the one tip that if you could go back in time and you could have found out earlier that you would tell yourself?
So the biggest thing and the hardest thing for me, so I no longer speak to my family. I no longer see my parents, my brothers, siblings, you name it. Because unfortunately that environment was incredibly toxic for me. And although I've kind of grown and developed as an individual, their perception of me is still the same Chris that they knew as I was growing up. Now, as I was developing and growing and so on and so forth, it felt, and obviously this is my perception, that the more, because my siblings are very, very clever academically. They're very smart. They were always going to do well in life, whereas I was very not academic at all. I kind of left regular school. So over here we have GCSEs, which you leave kind of high school with, and I only had 3 GCSEs. So I only kind of passed 3 classes, if you will, out of the 11 or 15 that we did. Naturally, that doesn't leave you with a lot of choices. So at the time, I was lucky that I was a good drawer, because I used to do that as a kind of a therapeutic thing to take me away from the environment and the situation I was in at the time. So my dad grabbed all my stuff, gave it to me, and sent me to college to get on a art design course, to which I did, and then headed down to kind of university and graphic design and so on. The way I potentially answer your question is when to kind of either tell myself at an earlier age to get out of the situation sooner rather than later, or 2, say to embrace myself more. And probably both at the same time, to be honest, because it was only when I started turning around and saying that, and beginning to believe that actually there isn't anything wrong with me, you know, that I'm just different, so I learn differently, I do things differently, I may kind of go around in 10 circles before going forward, for example, and yet I'm still very capable, you know. So when I went back to college, for example, I had my daughter on the way, you know, so she was coming, and I was choosing to go back to college, which at the time everyone was like, "You're stupid. What are you doing?" you know. And I believed in it. I sold it to my partner. She stood by me, and I went back, and to get onto the degree that I wanted to do at university, I needed 17 out of 18 distinctions in these kind of classes, in these modules. So I was like, I'm going to get all 18. Now, at that time, it never had been done on this course before, in this college, and I had never ever got a distinction in my life. Now, the difference was, at the time I was working in a nightclub, so I was working in the nights and then going to college in the daytime and trying to sleep in between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning, like the night. And the reason why I did it so much was because growing up in a hectic family, all I wanted was a family of my own, which is why I had a child so young. It's what I craved. It's all I wanted to be was loved and supported and accepted. So I kind of went down that route, and I was like, whatever it takes, I'm not going to ruin this. And the superpower for me, having ADHD, is the fact that I don't need much sleep to rely on, you know. So I was able to finish work at 3 o'clock, come home, sleep for a few hours, get up, be on a bus to college, do college all day and then go to work in the evening and fit in essays, writing at like 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And I came out with 18 out of 18 distinctions.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I had that distinction. I turned around and told myself, I'm not stupid, I just learn differently. And that is the biggest thing that I would have told myself back then, because of being bullied and feeling so different that I didn't want to engage in that class. And the problem was, back then, they didn't really know much about ADHD. They wasn't engaged in being dyslexic or having ADHD or having any sort of disabilities, if you will, or kind of special needs. So you didn't have the education system there. You didn't have the teachers teaching differently or engaging you differently. You were just kind of stuck in the special class, if you will. And there I am. I'm like, well, I'm not like these guys, you know. Some of these are like severely disabled, you know, and you're making out that I'm this, you know. And when I went to high school, it was, here's a little workbooklet, take it home and work on it yourself, you know. So for me, I was never going to do that. I felt ashamed, I felt embarrassed, and I kind of really struggled with that. So talking about mental health, when I got to being 18, I went through a series of things, if you will, that kind of felt like everything that could go bad did go bad. Every time I kind of left my house, I kind of got jumped and beat up and robbed. And at the age of 19, I was stabbed in my leg 3 times.
And you live in the good part of Wales? Like, what's the bad part of Wales like?
Well, that's the thing. It's a lot nicer now, but anywhere it has its bad eggs, you know. So for me, it was that thing, because for me, I'm a very loyal person, and in the sense, too loyal, you know. So I would hang around with these people thinking that they're my good friends, and my definition is that if something bad is happening to you, then I'm going to get stuck in because I'm this kind of ride or die friend, and yet very little people are that back to you. And at the time, I couldn't deal with that, you know, because I didn't talk about my emotions. I didn't talk about how I was feeling or what I was going through, and it all kind of got overwhelmed when I was having all these things happening to me, and it led to me wanting to end my life. You know, it ended up with me kind of wanting to not be here anymore, and all I cause is this harm to everybody and everyone around me, so everyone's better off without me. And to go from there to where I am now, where all I want to do is squeeze the last drop of life out of me and my existence.
A great way of saying it.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that if everyone showed a little bit more compassion, and if everyone took a little bit more emphasis and ownership of themselves and how they interact with people, and showed a little bit more empathy, then I believe that we all have a kind of purpose, if you will, and we owe it to ourselves to be nicer, better human beings to everyone else. Because right now, I can see you guys, and yet I don't know what's going on in your head. I don't know what happened before we jumped on this podcast. I don't know what you're going through. And for me, when I was working in a commercial gym and I was just starting off, I made a very conscious decision to be and say to myself that if I only see you 1 hour a day, I'm going to make it the best hour of that day. So whatever is going on in the rest of your life, it's okay. You're okay. And you'll be okay because I'm here with you. So there's that one person in your corner, regardless of whether you're fighting the whole world, then cool, I've got a shield too, and I'm right next to you. Let's fight it together. And
Wow.
I'm a big believer in that. I've always said that, and I've always been the type of coach that I heavily invest myself into my athletes. I don't treat them as clients; I treat them as friends. And whether it's right or wrong, I get involved in their lives. Because for me, I would rather work with 5 clients all the time for years and years and years than be the coach that has a different client every month, that doesn't know who they are or what they do or what they go through, that they just rock up into my gym and I beast them, I make them sweaty, I make them tired, and they go home and I take their money. For me,
It's more about the relationship.
Yeah, because I came from a place that I felt completely alone. I felt like I was, and at the time I was like kind of doing well financially. Had no overheads, had no kids, and so on. So if I was working, I was earning a fair bit, and then I'd be out in the night time. And if you told me that you couldn't come out, I'd pay for your night out. If you wanted your outfit to come out, cool, let's go shopping together. We're both getting your outfits, and so on. And I was the life and soul of the party, but also I was the loneliest man in the room. And I remember a night very vividly coming up to Christmas that I sat in this little booth with about 4 or 5 bottles on the table of kind of alcohol or like champagne or different spirits, and had all these people around me. And to this day, only one of those people are around to this day, and the rest of them I got rid of and removed out of my life because I just needed that fresh start. And literally the following year is when I met my partner.
Yeah, I think obviously there are times where you have to change the people around you, right? Because they're not healthy. And Jenna, I know it seemed like you were asking that question initially to see if you could get some advice for your boys. And so I'm just gonna like everybody's in a different situation. Maybe coaching your boys to break away from the family is not the approach that we would encourage at this point, but to embrace yourself, right? Yeah. I think is probably the stuff that I would key in on.
Yeah.
There. For sure.
You said you host a podcast to get free advice, so that's exactly what I tried to do.
No, I was tracking
such more information that I was like, I could make 7 T-shirts out about things that you've said in the last half hour or so.
Yeah.
Because
I was tracking that.
It is amazing the way you're phrasing it of, yeah, I had these things that happened in my life, but I can also spin it and make it better and positive and be able to inspire and support others at the same time. So I did want to know some tips to help a ADHD kid in my own house. But I'm also thinking of my students that I work with every day. As a special education teacher, I do work with kids that have ADHD or, multiple disabilities that face the same challenges that you did. And being able to hear a story that you have overcome that and, are a very successful, happy adult is something that I can also take back to my classroom too.
Yeah, because you turned those things into strengths. You said
exactly
right? That those became your superpowers, which are awesome. Yeah. And it's I don't want to say it's funny because that's not the right word. But when you were describing how you would play the soft music and you'd have the mood lighting and all that. And while this is an audio podcast, we could see each other. And you're in your home gym. I'm guessing. I'm not 100% sure. You've got your T-shirt on. I can't imagine looking at you today that you were bullied as a child. You must have went through a significant transformation at some point. But when you were painting the picture of the mood lighting and the soft music, that is not what I envisioned at all.
So for me, I think it's very much looking after, like, at that point, for example, right, my very first project in university as a graphic designer, we had to create 3 posters representing our past, our present, and our future, right? Lots of people for the future did kind of collages and almost kind of cut, paste and stuck different things that they wanted, and they all put success as the fast cars, the big houses, the monetary things. All I did was put out a old-fashioned typography English font of the word happy and the dictionary definition underneath it. And I put it there on big A3 piece of paper, and I put it on the wall, and that was my submission. Because at that time, all I wanted was to be happy. It doesn't matter about the monetary value of things, because yes, we all need to get paid. Yes, we all need to eat and live and survive. But I think if you chase a purpose and not the kind of the money side of things, you'll find happiness, and then you'll also find the money will find you. I'm a big believer in energy, in the sense that if I continually put out and, like, for example, my business, I based it on building a community. And the reason why I did that is because I didn't feel like I was a part of one. So when I created this community, and when I put out things that I could have made money on, but chose not to, as a way to include people. For example, I've done open water swimming every Sunday at my local beach since maybe 8 or 9 years now. And I don't charge a single penny for it. And at the start, when I first did it, no one swam in open water locally around us unless you were part of this one club. And it's only since COVID and the pandemic that people do cold water dipping, they do plunging, they do kind of cold water exposure. Years ago, it was just this weird guy, me, going down swimming in this water that was dangerous, and I was stupid, and I was this, that, and the other. And it was just another example of me being different and me being judged, and now everybody is doing it. And that's not me saying that I'm the reason for it. It's just funny that the moment you start embracing your differences, you will find your community, because they're out there. The difference is, what we don't realize is when we're in a room talking and no one's listening, we're in the wrong room. And it doesn't mean that you don't belong. It just means that they're not the people for you. You know, it's like if we started talking about individual things that none of the other people in the conversation actually found interesting, you naturally switch off. And it's only through maturity that you realize that. And I think if more and more kids realize that, then they'd be in a better way, because they wouldn't be searching or wouldn't be trying so hard to be this person's friend when they have no interest in them. They would just go off and find a different friend. And I think if more and more people embrace their own differences, then we would be happier, you know?
I do. So you're taking on this challenge, and obviously you picked a charity, but we've learned that there's obviously a deep rooted connection, that it wasn't just some charity that you randomly picked for no apparent reason. So we kind of we've learned that through this process. So I definitely respect all of that, because it's something that you're passionate about and everything. So you're doing 7 races over the next how long? How could, if somebody was listening and they're like, hey, we want to help support, how would somebody do that?
So the schedule right now is I've got just under in 11 Sundays, I'll be doing my first race. So
Okay.
the first one is I'm on 70.3 Staffordshire. It's a lake swim, a kind of rolling hill bike ride, and I'd say a pretty flat course for the run. Some people would disagree because there's like one or two hills, if you will, and they're pretty tasty. Yeah. But all in all, it's a pretty flat run, and it's quite nice because it's around this little beautiful town centre, and it goes along some of the canals, and it's very English in regards to there's a castle you run around, and so on and so forth. But that's the first one. It's then 4 weeks later is my first full Ironman, which is Ironman UK, based in Bolton. Yep. It's a tough course again, a lake swim. The bike ride is incredibly hilly. It's about, I think, around 4,000 meters elevation, if I'm right. So it's got about 5 big steep hills with hairpin turns on the back end of it. And then there's a few kind of technical turns and so on and so forth. And then the run section, it kind of is in 2 phases, where you've got the town centre, which is pretty flat, although a lot of it is on cobbles. So if it's raining, for example, it's pretty slippery and pretty treacherous as you're kind of taking bends and so on.
I bet.
Then you kind of go into this giant park, which is beautiful on a sunny day, but the hill on it is ridiculous. Most people walk that hill. And the top road, which is kind of like the longest, slowest climb up and then dip down. It's kind of like a really wide house roof, if you will. It's a small climb, but it's enough to go, we'll be there yet. It's kind of like an out and back, and then you're back in the park, and then you're back in the town centre. So it's 4 loops of that. Then it kind of gets a bit intense. So 2 weeks after that is the next 70.3. That's back in Wales. That's in Swansea. It's a brand new race. It's an incredible race. I was there with a client last year that I actually did it with. She is amazing. But we did that race, and that race is another very, very technical race. It's in the build-up to Ironman Wales. So it's the one thing we have in Wales is hills galore. So it's in a beautiful town, Swansea. It's a very kind of beachy type surf type place. So with like mountainous terrain behind it. So the swim is in one of the docks, the like kind of shipping docks. And then you're out on the bike, and then it's literally hills. So if you were to make that an Ironman, it would be more elevation than Bolton and Wales.
Oh wow!
So it's a pretty steep one. But then the run is dead flat. It's literally along this giant beach in the Mumbles. It's beautiful. Last year we were lucky enough to have it incredibly sunny, but also incredibly hot. But it was beautiful, and it's one of those races that if it turns into kind of really bad weather, the whole course could be different in the sense that there's a lot of open mountainous kind of areas where the winds come from different directions depending on where you are, which makes it a very kind of challenging course. 4 weeks after that, we've got I'm over in Ireland. And then it's like a back-to-back day. So on the Saturday, I'll be doing a 70.3, and on the Sunday, I'll be doing a full Ironman. And then...
How many are we on now? I was trying to count, and I lost count.
So that's
5?
number 5.
That was number 5.
So
okay. Holy moly.
And then 2 weeks later, I'm in Wales. Doing that course, and then 2 weeks after that, I'm at the bottom of England in Weymouth, finishing off the race.
Wow! So what is the total calendar time from the first race to the last race? How many weeks or months are we talking about?
So you're talking June, July, August, September, 4 months.
God, you're going to do 7 races in 4 months, and at least 2 of them or full distance, right?
Yeah, three or four.
Three.
Halves.
Wow. That's
Kudos to
That's
you.
that is impressive, aggressive. I don't even know what the right adjective is. Insane, maybe. I don't know. Right. Definitely not something that I would attempt. But you're younger than me, I'm sure. Wow. Well, I wish you well. But how could somebody support you? Like, or how could somebody support your charity?
So I have a Just Giving link that I can give you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on my Instagram if people want to donate through my bio.
Okay.
My Instagram is @IamChris_Hill. So if you want to find me, it's pretty easy. But yeah, it's literally in the bio there, and it's the only charity link there. So if you'd love to donate, I would appreciate it greatly. Like I said, all donations go straight to the charity itself. I've had questions, and it's been really interesting putting it out onto these Ironman groups. Lots and lots of mixed responses, and it's funny because the more I put myself out there, the more I try to be the person I want to be, which is this person that leads by example. And I think that I've naturally, like most of us, we've all been through a lot. And I think if more and more people talked about their experiences, it would normalize a lot of things. Because we typically see the Instagram lifestyles and we go, oh yeah, this person's super successful, this person's got their stuff together, and all that shit. When, like, the amount of times that I do what I do and yet I feel like an absolute fraud. I feel like that I'm kind of going from one day to the next, barely making it by and so on. And this is one of the reasons why I do these challenges, because it leaves me feeling incredibly humbled. It leaves me feeling like I am truly, truly grateful for everything and everyone in my life. I am incredibly lucky to be able to do what I do. I feel absolutely honored to be able to do things I do, and to have someone look to me for advice, for inspiration, for guidance. I think I'm incredibly fortunate to be in that position of power, if you will. So for me, I feel like I owe it to myself to be the person that deep down I've always wanted to be, and the person that I believe I'm here to be. I think that so many of us shy away because we're ultimately afraid of taking that first step. And I totally get it. Like, I've been there. I wore that T-shirt for many, many years. Like, it's incredible. It's like, for example, because I got bullied so much, when I first started as a personal trainer and as a coach, I was like, right, I'm going to wear Nike everything, trainers, shorts, T-shirt, jackets, you name it. You cannot make fun of me because I am wearing a top tier premium level like brand. And then I started getting into kind of more and more science. I started then venturing into kind of barefoot running and kind of Vivo barefoot shoes, which back then, like, no one knew about it. And I don't know whether you guys know about it, but they're kind of minimalistic trainers, for example. Right? And they allow your feet to be feet. They allow your toes to kind of spread out a little bit.
Now, I'm familiar.
Yeah. Now, years ago, when this brand first came about, they had 6 pairs of trainers, and they weren't the most stylish, and they weren't the most kind of pretty shoe to look at. And I've got size 12 feet because I'm 6'5", and I bought these swim run versions of the trainers because I was like, I really like them. And yet they had this bright orange sole and this black top. And first thing someone said to me was, I look like Daffy Duck. Now, as true as it might have been, it took a lot. What that person didn't know is for 6 months I put off buying these shoes. For 6 months I told myself, like, well, what happens if someone says something about me? What happens if someone judges me? No one's judging me wearing these Nike trainers. No one's making fun of me. Everyone's going, oh, wow, where'd you get trainers from? Like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like, because I always wore the latest. And you can't make fun of that. Mm-hmm. And yet, I wanted to do what I thought was cool and what was best for me. And yet, I was wearing this costume, even though years later, I had broken down some barriers, that I had developed some more strength in my character, that I was on the face of things, the person that could walk into a gym and command the room. And yet, deep down, I hadn't really done any kind of real work on myself. And it was only when I then said, no, I'm going to buy these trainers, and I started doing things like that. And it's like, do you know what a dry robe is? Have you ever worn a dry robe before? No?
No.
So a dry robe is massive in Britain, right? It is now. Back then, no one knew about it, like yourselves. But basically, it's an oversized coat that you kind of wear, and it's like super fluffy inside, and it's completely waterproof on the outside. And it's brilliant for doing lots of open water swimming, because you kind of stand by the side of your car, you're getting changed, and you're completely okay. It's one of those kind of coats. Awesome. Nowadays, a lot of people walk their dogs in there. If I'm picking the kids up in school, I'll put my dry robe on, and so on and so forth. Now, I was doing a lot of open water coaching at the time, and I was going through a lot of golf umbrellas because it was winter and the weather was horrendous. And I'm holding these golf umbrellas up, and I'm getting absolutely soaked because the rain is coming on from the side. And my golf umbrella has just broken. It's gone inside out again. And they're like 30, 40 pounds at a time, so they're relatively expensive. And then I'm on Instagram, and all of a sudden this advert pops up about this coat. And it's only £99. Well, I've just spent like 3-4 umbrellas, and I'm like, I'm totally buying this coat. So I bought this coat, and I'm walking to work. I'm walking everywhere. It is so comfortable, and I'm like, these coats are amazing. I'm walking to work. Everyone's looking at me weird because it looks like this giant over anorak kind of coat, and it was like, what the hell are you wearing? Now I'm like. I've got to the point now where I'm like starting to feel more comfortable in myself, and I'm like, I'm wearing the best thing ever. That's what I'm doing. You're just jealous because you haven't got one.
The confidence, though, that you needed to be able to say that.
I'm starting to embrace who I am, and starting to wear the brands that I want to identify with, that have the similar sort of beliefs that I have, because I love the sea. It's one of my places that I feel most calm and most at peace with. It's kind of my go-to place if I'm ever having a kind of a very bad day or a bad moment, that helps clear my head. And so for me, it's like connecting with organizations that want to do humanitarian work, that want to look after our oceans, that want to look after the world. So for me, it's connecting with organizations that align with the person that I'm trying to be, and those level of examples. And that's the way that I kind of want to be. So like one of my clients was like, why am I spending like £130 on these Vivo barefoot shoes when he bought this £30 pair from Amazon that is this kind of cheap plastic version from China, And I'm like, well, all of this stuff was made out of 16 recycled bottles. The whole shoe was. So they look after the world, and the fact that the manufacturing companies and so on, no one's getting ripped off, everyone's getting their fair share. And that's the reason why I'm lucky enough to be able to afford these shoes, that I'm lucky enough to be able to pay extra, so it does everyone else in the chain a little bit of good.
Exactly.
Wow.
I love that.
It's little things like that it's just asking those questions, and asking that, like, how far are you willing to be that person? How far are you willing to go to be able to become that person? So going back on something that you picked up earlier about going to the dark places, what I found in my growth and development is you only find out who you are in the extreme environments, you know, and deep down in everyday life, we hide. We become very good at hiding, just like I did. You know, I wore this mask to work. I was bouncy, bubbly, confident, and all the rest of it, and I would do that for years. But I only found self-acceptance through putting myself through this commitment that, for me, it was the whole reason why I got into Ironman, was because at the time I was this guy who worked in a gym. I didn't have any goals that were set in stone, that had a date that if you don't train all these days and get good enough, you're going to fail on this day.
Yeah.
So I felt like this fraud that was telling these people that I was working with, and don't get me wrong, I was going to the gym and so on and so forth, and I was doing the typical stuff, but it wasn't any more than anybody else, and it wasn't any less, and it didn't have any repercussions that if I didn't go to the gym today, that it would affect tomorrow or the next day or whatever. So it didn't bother me. So when I found out about Ironman, when I found out about triathlon, and it was a kind of a funny experience that I only found out about triathlon when someone came up to me and was like, "Hey, can you write me a program?" And I was like, "I know absolutely nothing about triathlon. But if you give me 2 weeks, I'll buy a load of books, I'll do a load of research, and I'll write you a plan." And then within that 2-week period, I had 6 other people come up to me and ask me for triathlon plans. I went to see my family. So I've got like kind of cousins and aunties down West Wales where Ironman Tenby is. And it just happened to be the very first Ironman Wales event. And we met in the town centre, not knowing the event was on. And I stood there and I walked up this hill to where the marathon section was. And I said, "What the hell is going on?" And this guy next to me was like, "Oh, it's Ironman Wales." I was like, "What the hell is an Ironman?" And then he told me, and I was like, "You are." couldn't believe it, you know. And then in front of me was, now, like I said earlier, I'm 6'5". This guy was massive. He was so much taller than me. He was wider than me. He was like an absolute door filler. And next to him, there was this little tiny old lady that I went up to afterwards, and she was 74 years old. And I just stood there as judgmental as could be and said, "They're doing Ironman." What? Yeah. And the guy laughed and he was like, "Yeah, they're doing Ironman." And I was like, wow. And I spent the entire rest of the day waiting for those 2 people to come across that finish line so I could celebrate them. And I left there and I went on YouTube and I watched every single Ironman video that could possibly be. And I was like, this is the thing that I need to do. This is the thing that is going to allow me to be the coach that not only talks the talk, but walks the walk, that allows me to find myself, to be more of the person that I want to be, and to become happy.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I think you know it's definitely a pattern that I see, that you have really, really embraced certain aspects of your life and you've turned that around. And Chris, I can't thank you enough for being open and honest and vulnerable and sharing all that stuff with us. I mean, hopefully if there is anybody out there that's listening that maybe hasn't come to terms with the fact that they need support, reaching out for support is not a weakness. It's a sign of strength, right? So if you are listening and you're struggling with certain things, we would definitely encourage you to reach out and get the help that you need, right? To where you can become a person who uses those things for your benefit and they're not holding you back. Chris, I wish you the best on your endeavor. 7 Ironman in 4 months. Whew, that is crazy.
Our tracker's going to be going crazy.
Oh, I know. We will definitely definitely be tracking you on race day, but I want to be respectful of your time. I don't want to take up any more of your time because I know you've been generous with us. So normally we would ask for final thoughts, but I got to be honest with you. You've given us so much insight. I think we're just going to leave it there, right? And say, it was really nice to meet you. You'll give me your charity link. We'll drop it in the show notes.
Yeah,
we would definitely, encourage anybody who is so moved to support your cause. If they would, probably it's one of those things where anything is welcomed and helpful, right? Because if a whole bunch of people give a little bit, it adds up to a lot, right? You don't have to give this big monument number, right?
Exactly.
Jenna? Yeah, Jenna, it was great hanging out with you as well. I know you're on spring break today.
I know. Great way of spending spring break here.
Yeah,
on the podcast.
Hopefully your thumb is doing better.
Yeah, it's about the same, but that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll get another update on another time. Cool. All right, Chris. Well, let's stay in touch. And maybe Jenna, when you're in your Wales celebrating, you guys can connect.
That would be awesome.
What do you think about that?
But thank you
guys.
very much for having me and reaching out. It's been an absolute pleasure and an absolute privilege. So thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Enjoyed hanging out with you as well. All right, don't hang up.